Dr. Alina Ward had always been fascinated by the mysteries of the ocean. As a respected marine biologist, she had spent over a decade studying deep-sea ecosystems, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for what she was about to face. One quiet morning, she sat alone in the control room of her private research vessel, scanning sonar data from a deep trench in the Pacific. Strange rhythmic pulses had been recorded for weeks too organized to be natural, too deep for any known species. Most of her colleagues dismissed it as tectonic activity, but Alina couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was calling. Armed with a specially built submersible capable of diving deeper than any standard craft, she decided to investigate alone. As she descended into the blue-black abyss, the light from the surface slowly disappeared, and her only companion was the hum of machinery and the quiet echo of her breathing. Minutes turned 2 hours, and the trench walls narrowed, forming a tunnel of jagged rock. Just as she began to doubt herself, a massive shadow moved beside her sub. So silently, it seemed like part of the water itself. Her monitors went blank for a moment, but when they flickered back, she saw it clearly: an enormous creature with shining scales, gentle glowing eyes, and the shape of a dragon from ancient myths. Panic rose in her chest, but the creature didn't attack. Instead, it floated calmly, watching her, pulsing softly with light. Alina couldn't explain how she knew, but she felt that it was trying to communicate, to guide her. With a deep breath, she eased her grip on the controls and let the sub follow the creature, which swam slowly through the trench, leading her downward into a place no human had ever seen. As they traveled deeper, strange bioluminescent plants lit the walls, and ruins began to appear: archways made of coral-like stone, symbols etched into columns, and statues resembling both humans and sea creatures. Her heart pounded. This wasn't a natural formation. It was a city, an ancient one, long lost to the sea. The dragon paused before a massive gate carved into the trench wall. The gate shimmered faintly as if reacting to her presence. Then, it opened, light spilled out, soft and golden, unlike anything found in the deep. Her sub crossed the threshold, and for a moment, everything went white. When her vision cleared, she found herself floating inside a vast underwater dome with breathable air. She removed her helmet, shaking, gasping, and overwhelmed. Outside the dome, the dragon waited patiently, still pulsing with that strange, steady rhythm. As she stepped forward, Alina realized she had crossed a boundary not just of depth, but of history, of truth, of everything she thought she knew about Earth. Something in this forgotten place was alive, aware, and waiting, and somehow it had been calling her. Alina stood inside the glowing dome, her eyes wide with disbelief as she looked around at the strange and beautiful world around her. The walls of the dome were made of clear crystal, thick but transparent, showing the endless deep sea outside. Massive towers made of coral-like stone stood beyond the dome, their surfaces glowing with soft lights that changed color slowly, like breathing. Strange sea plants floated through the water, moving as if they had minds of their own. The giant sea dragon that had led her here remained outside, watching her calmly, its long body coiling gracefully through the water like a ribbon. Alina took slow steps forward, her boots tapping lightly against the smooth crystal floor. The air inside was warm and fresh, not salty like the sea. Somehow, this place was alive, protected by ancient energy she could not explain. As she moved deeper into the dome, lights turned on ahead of her, guiding her along a path. It felt as if the city itself recognized her, like it had been waiting for her to arrive. Along the glowing corridor, walls were covered with carvings, humans standing beside large sea dragons, both working together in harmony. Some carvings showed ships, flying above oceans, powered not by engines but by energy flowing from the creatures themselves. Alina stopped and stared, her mind racing. Could it be possible? Had humans once lived in peace with these sea dragons? And if so, why was this city forgotten? The corridor opened into a massive chamber filled with water on the outside and strange devices inside, Crystals floated in midair, humming gently, and circular windows showed views of the ancient underwater buildings outside. A console in the center lit up as she approached, and before she touched anything, a soft voice echoed through the chamber, not loud, not harsh, but like wind moving through tall trees. It was not speaking any language she knew, but somehow, she understood it. "You are the one," it said. Alina's hands trembled. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice low. The console responded by showing her an image of memory, maybe of a time long ago, when humans lived both on land and beneath the ocean. They worked with sea dragons to protect the planet, using their combined knowledge to heal nature and build great cities. But something had happened, a great war, or a flood, or maybe a betrayal. It wasn't clear. The underwater city had sealed itself off to protect its secrets, and the guardians, like the dragon outside, had waited ever since. The memory faded, and the lights dimmed. Alina continued forward and entered another chamber, smaller and colder. In the center was a strange glass coffin, covered in a soft green mist. She walked closer and gasped. Inside was a man. His body looked completely normal, not damaged, not decayed. He looked young, his eyes closed like he was just sleeping. Her breath caught as she leaned closer. Was he human? He had markings on his skin, glowing slightly, and his clothing looked ancient but advanced. A name was written on the side of the pod. Kellen. The console near him blinked and lit up as she touched it. Lines of unreadable text scrolled past, and a heartbeat monitor appeared. He was alive and sleeping for who knew how long. Alina didn't know what to do. Wake him? Leave him? Was he dangerous? She backed away slowly, her mind spinning with questions. Just then, the chamber trembled slightly, and a distant low rumble echoed through the floor. The sea dragon outside stirred, swimming closer to the dome. Lights began blinking all around her, and the voice returned, sharper this time. "The city has been seen." Seen? By who? Panic built in her chest. She looked toward the sea, and, far in the distance, she noticed something new. Bright lights, blinking in a cold mechanical pattern. They were not part of the city. They were not natural. Something was coming. Something from the surface. Alina turned back to the sleeping figure in the pod. If anyone knew what to do, it was probably him. She placed her hand on the control panel, and the pod began to glow. As the cover slid open, a deep breath filled the room, not hers, but his. Kellen opened his eyes, and the forgotten city took its first breath of life in thousands of years. Kellen's eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly in the soft green light of the chamber, and for a moment he did not move, as if his mind was catching up with the world around him. Alina stood frozen, her heart racing, unsure whether to speak or run, but something about the calmness in his face made her stay. He turned his head slowly, looking at her with eyes that held 1,000 years of silence. Then he sat up, placing a hand on the edge of the pod, and spoke in a voice that was quiet but strong. "You are not of this age." Alina nodded carefully, her voice trembling as she replied, "I'm a scientist. From the surface, I followed something, and it brought me here." Kellen looked past her at the crystal walls, sensing something she could not. His face darkened slightly. "They've found the city," he said, more to himself than to her. "The world above has awakened more than just me." Alina asked who had found them, but he did not answer right away. Instead, he stood up, surprisingly steady for someone who had been asleep for centuries, and walked to the glowing console, placing his hand on it. Symbols lit up, and a hologram of the ocean outside appeared, showing blinking lights approaching fast submarines, unmanned drones, perhaps even ships. Kellen touched the air beside the image, and it zoomed in, revealing metal machines scanning the area, unaware of the ancient city's true power. "They are blind," he muttered, "but they're machines. They dig, they break, and they destroy." Alina felt a knot grow in her stomach. "You knew this would happen?" she asked, watching his face, Kellen turned to her with a deep sadness in his eyes. It always does, he said. When the world forgets what it was, it always returns with hunger. He walked past her, motioning for her to follow, and the doors of the chamber opened on their own. As they walked through the glowing corridors, Kellen began to speak not just with words, but through the city itself. Lights moved where he walked, images appeared on the walls, showing scenes from the past. Alina saw humans riding sea dragons across the ocean skies, building great floating cities and underwater temples, working together with nature instead of bending it to their will. But then came war, fire raining from above, cities drowned, and the dragons retreating to the deepest parts of the sea. The city had gone silent to protect the last of them, locking away knowledge and power until the right one came. Alina realized with a chill that she had awakened more than a man. She had reawakened a buried past. Suddenly, the ground shook beneath them, stronger this time, and the calm in Kellen's face turned to urgency. They are trying to breach the dome, he said. They will not stop until they get inside. Alina followed him into a large chamber shaped like a circle, with floating crystals in the center and giant panels that pulsed with energy. Kellen placed his hand on one of the crystals, and a deep hum filled the room. The sea dragon outside stirred and swam closer, its eyes meeting Kellen's through the dome. We are not alone, Kellen whispered. They remember me. He turned to Alina. I need your help. The city responds to you too. I felt it the moment you entered. You are chosen, even if you don't know why. Alina hesitated. What do you want me to do? He pointed to a smaller console, one she had not noticed before. You must activate the beacon. It will send a message to all the guardians who still sleep. If we stand alone, we will fall, but together, we may still protect what remains. Alina walked to the console, her hands shaking as symbols glowed beneath her fingers. She didn't know how she understood the controls, but something deep inside her guided her actions. The beacon rose from the floor like a shining pillar, and, when she touched it, a wave of light burst from the top of the dome and shot through the water like a pulse. Kellen smiled, but only for a moment. Outside, the machines began to react, sensing the energy. One of the drones fired something at the dome, a missile or drill, and, though it bounced off, the impact cracked a small part of the crystal wall. Alarms echoed through the chamber, and the sea dragon roared a low, deep sound that shook the very water. Kellen turned back to her. We don't have much time. They will come harder now, and they will not come with peace. Alina stared at the growing crack, fear building in her chest, but beneath it, a strange courage also rose. She was no longer just a visitor. She was now part of something ancient, something powerful. As more cracks formed and lights flickered around them, Kellen stood tall, his eyes glowing brighter than before. The sleepers will come, he said firmly, and when they do, the world will remember what it lost. Outside the dome, the water had turned into a storm of shadows and flashing lights as the machines from the surface surrounded the ancient city, their sleek metal bodies scanning, drilling, and launching probes against the crystal barrier that had protected the city for thousands of years. But now, that barrier was beginning to fail. Inside, Alina stood beside Kellen, her heart pounding as another shudder ran through the ground and a long crack spread across one of the dome's outer walls, glowing faintly like a wound. Kellen's face was calm but focused, his eyes fixed on the floating crystals that now glowed brighter with the energy of the activated beacon, and somewhere far off in the deep, other signals were beginning to answer, pulses of light, slow and ancient, moving through the sea like waking dreams. Alina could feel something changing around her, something massive and invisible, like old memories stirring in the very water. The sea dragon swam tighter circles around the city, letting out warning cries, its body glowing with an inner light that matched the crystal structures. Kellen touched the central panel again, and parts of the city began to move, pillars rising from the seafloor, walls sliding into place, hidden defenses awakening. This place was never just for living, he said softly. It was made to protect knowledge, history, truth, even if it meant sleeping for centuries. Alina looked at him and asked, "Can we stop them?" Kellen didn't answer right away. "We can try," he said finally, "but they will not listen. They come with hunger, not with questions." Outside, one of the machines launched a second weapon, and this time it cracked a deeper section of the dome, sending vibrations through the city so strong that the floating crystals flickered. Kellen moved quickly to another console, summoning images of the incoming fleet. They were submarines, now deep-sea crawlers, even robotic divers with cutting arms. "They think this place is treasure," Kellen said. "They do not know it is a graveyard of warnings." The sea dragon roared again, and this time it was joined by another voice far away, but growing louder. Alina turned to the display and saw it, a second dragon, older, covered in glowing scars, swimming toward them through the deep. Then another, and another. The beacon had worked. The Guardians were returning. "Now they remember," Kellen said, a flicker of hope in his voice. The old ones come to protect the last story of the sea, but the machines had already begun their final approach. A large crawler reached the edge of the dome and deployed metal limbs, pressing against the weakened section, trying to break through. Kellen and Alina rushed to the defensive chamber, where forgotten systems now blinked to life. A glowing orb hovered in the center, and when Kellen placed his hand on it, the walls of the city lit up with energy lines, and from hidden ports, long mechanical arms unfolded, shaped like coral, but sharp and strong. The underwater city was not just a memory, it was a weapon built from peace, designed to defend without killing. The arms moved with speed, swatting away probes and disabling drones with bursts of light. Alina helped where she could, activating energy fields and linking defensive patterns across the outer structures. But the pressure from the surface machines was too strong, and cracks kept growing. Suddenly, one of the robotic divers broke through, forcing its way into the city's outer ring, its camera spinning wildly as it recorded everything. Kellen moved toward it, raised his arm, and from his palm, a beam of light struck the intruder, melting its shell in seconds. "This place is not for them," he said coldly. More machines followed, now entering through broken parts of the dome. The sea dragons roared and swept down, crashing into the invading machines with force so great that waves rippled through the city. One of the dragons released a deep pulse, and a whole squad of drones short-circuited at once. But the battle was only growing. Alina watched helplessly as another section of the dome shattered, water rushing in. Emergency walls dropped down to seal the break, but it was clear the city could not hold forever. "What happens if we lose?" she asked Kellen, her voice shaking. He looked at her, eyes filled with both fire and sadness. "Then the last memory of the old world will drown," he said, "and the surface will forget it ever had a choice." Alina stood straighter. "Then we don't lose," she said. She ran to the command pillar and pressed her hand against the beacon. "Can we send a message to the surface? Something they can hear?" Kellen nodded slowly. "If they choose to listen." Together, they activated the ancient signal array, and from the heart of the city, a new beam of light shot toward the surface, not a weapon, but a story, a history, a warning. It carried visions of the old world, the cities built with dragons, the balance they once had, and the fall that followed when greed overtook wonder. Whether the people above would understand, no one knew, but the message was sent. Outside, the dragons fought with everything they had, weaving between enemy craft, defending their forgotten home. Inside, Kellen and Alina stood surrounded by flickering lights, holding onto hope as the city shook once more, knowing that even if the walls fell, the truth was now rising above the ocean. Ships floated quietly now, no longer firing, no longer moving forward, as the great beam of light from the sea had reached them and filled their screens with images so powerful that even hardened minds were left in silence. People across the world stared at their devices as the signal spread faster than any broadcast ever had, showing a history long buried, an alliance between humans and ancient sea guardians, a peaceful civilization lost to time, and a warning written in the fall of a once great city. Down below, the underwater battle slowed as the machines began to shut down, their signals overridden by the message, their operators no longer pushing forward but instead frozen, watching, listening. Alina stood beside Kellen in the control chamber, the city still shaking slightly from earlier damage, but now glowing more steadily as power flowed again through its veins. The dragons had stopped fighting and now circled above like silent protectors, their glowing eyes watching both the ruined dome and the stunned machines floating in the water. They heard it, Alina whispered, barely able to believe it. Kellen nodded, his expression soft for the first time since he had awakened. They remembered what it means to be more than conquerors. The city had suffered, but it was still alive. Its memory systems had stabilized, and its energy core was healing. With the help of the dragon's presence, outside, some of the surface machines began to retreat, not in fear, but in respect, turning away without causing more harm. Alina looked up through the broken dome to the fading light from above. Will they come back? She asked. Kellen looked thoughtful. Maybe, but next time, they might bring questions instead of weapons. On the surface, governments, scientists, and ordinary people debated what they had seen, but most agreed on one thing. Earth's history had changed forever. The underwater city was no longer a myth or a hidden treasure, it was proof of a forgotten truth, one that belonged to all of humanity. A global agreement was quickly made to protect the area, declaring the deep zone a site of shared heritage and forbidden from exploitation. Teams were formed not to dig or destroy, but to learn, guided by those who now understood the message. Alina, now returned to the surface for the first time in days, stood before cameras and explained what had happened, how the dragons had trusted her, how Kellen had awakened, and how the city had nearly been lost because humans forgot how to listen. The world listened carefully. Kellen did not return to sleep. He remained awake, though far from the surface, choosing to guide the rebuilding of the underwater city, with Alina visiting often. The dragons, too, remained, not hiding anymore, but swimming freely in protected waters, their presence slowly accepted by humans who had once believed such creatures were only legends. Across Earth, people began asking deeper questions about what else had been lost, what other stories were buried under oceans, mountains, and deserts. Scientists worked alongside storytellers, and for the first time in centuries, truth and myth were seen as partners rather than enemies. Children learned about the Sea City in school, not as a fairy tale, but as a lesson in balance and respect. Alina, though offered many honors, chose to return to her diving life, helping connect researchers to the underwater world in safer, more respectful ways. One morning, as she swam beside Kellen through the slowly repaired dome, she asked, "Do you think this will last?" Kellen smiled faintly. "That depends on what kind of story they choose to write now." And Alina knew he was right. Earth had entered a new chapter not because of war or technology, but because of understanding. The ocean still held many secrets, but for now, one had been shared, and that was enough to change everything. The deep no longer felt like a place of danger, but a place of wisdom. The dragons no longer felt like beasts of legend, but guardians of truth. And the city once forgotten was now a living bridge between past and future.